Hello and welcome to Purchasing Lifecycle. My name is Renee Bergstresser and I'm a software training consultant with ConnectWise Manage. I'm joined today by
Mitchell Rollo, also a software training consultant here at ConnectWise. And today we are going to be going over the purchasing lifecycle, end-to-end, of really how products enter and leave ConnectWise Manage over their entire lives.
So to get started, we're first going to have to get into opportunity conversion, because this is where we take our sales members' hard work and turn them into products, or actually turn them into items that generate demand for us, so we can then purchase from our vendors, leading right into creating purchase orders. This is where we actually let our vendors know what we need to order from them based on that demand generated through the opportunity conversion process. Then we'll move on to picking, receiving, and shipping. This is looking at us and what we are doing to either set aside certain products and record that we have actually received them or shipped them out to our clients.
Yep.
And then finally, we need to handle the invoicing portion of this, getting paid for it, and making sure that it shows up properly in our choice accounting package.
Yeah, I wanted to call out here that this covers more than what a lot of people typically think of when they think of the purchasing lifecycle. They think of, I need to purchase it, I need to track when it gets here and when it leaves my warehouse. But there's more on either end of that. We need to track what initially tells me I need to purchase that, and then what happens after I've actually shipped it out, which is it goes over to your accounting package to update your QuickBooks or your Great Plains or your Sage or whatever you're using to track it on that end. So there's really more on either end than just the purchasing part itself, and it's important to cover those connections between the two.
Absolutely, and do keep in mind that after this webinar, we will have a live Q&A. So as we're going through the process, if any questions come up, if anything seems concerning, or you're not sure how it would relate to your process, please email education@connectwise.com to let us know, and we'd be happy to go into those specific items in a little bit more detail for you.
So our first main topic, as you saw on the agenda and see now, is going to be opportunity conversion. The purchasing lifecycle really starts on the sales side of things. It's whenever we sell something, that's when we now need to purchase something. So let's go ahead and take a look at a business case with John, our sales manager. John's team just closed a new deal, good for them. The products sold need to be purchased before they can be delivered to the customer. I'm sure this is a scenario that affects all of you out there. The opportunity must be converted to start this process. That conversion is really key to take all that information we've gathered during that sales cycle that's been listed on the quote and on the opportunity and use that not only for our team to actually deliver the service, but for our purchasing team to actually go ahead and acquire those products from the right vendor at the right cost and ship them to the right place on top of that.
For sure, and we definitely don't want to be generating demand to purchase products until we're sure that deal is signed, and we're sure we absolutely need them. And this is why the opportunity is sort of free from generating demand, because we don't want things that we could be selling generating demand for our purchasing team. We want things that we have sold generating that demand.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this conversion is there's no double entry. I don't need to re-enter this stuff to purchase it. It's all going to flow through the system from the opportunity to those next steps, which can vary depending on what your process is, which we'll take a look at in a second. So here is a look at an opportunity itself for those of you that are not familiar. The important part for our products is going to be over on that right-hand side, which is going to be that forecast pod. That's where we list out all the product that we are selling as part of this deal. Now, if we want to go ahead and convert this to the next step, we have two options at the top. We can either convert or win the opportunity. They're both there because it's going to vary what your process is. If you only have one member that handles both winning the deal and converting that opportunity to that next step, use that win button. It's going to combine both processes into one smooth flow. However, if it's different people that handle those processes, that's where the convert button comes in. One person can win the deal, and then another person comes in and converts it after the fact. One of the reasons why another person may handle it is salespeople aren't necessarily qualified to go ahead and do a lot of the important decisions that happen during the conversion process. What records need to be created? Maybe they don't know how to create an agreement, or they're not familiar with how projects are put together. That's fine. You probably have members on your team that are more familiar. They can handle the conversions for them. Now, when we're converting over, I want to highlight one section of this product section here, which is that product class. This is a hard-coded list of 5 different things that ConnectWise Manage uses to classify its products with how we treat them during conversion. We'll go into more detail on the different options, but right now we're looking at non-inventory and inventory class products, which is the type of products that we will be purchasing. So when we're doing that conversion, you have 4 options available. You can do a sales order, service ticket, project, or agreement. Really, any of these work depending on what it was that was sold. If it's just products that need to be ordered, a sales order works great. If it's something that has some labor involved, service tickets are perfect. If there's a lot of labor involved, then you're probably going to want to go the product route so you can get a more detailed look at really what all is involved at completing this deal. And if it's a recurring contract that you're billing for on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis, that's when an agreement is going to be your option of choice.
And one thing I wanted to call out is that most of these items, the sales order, the service ticket, and the project, once it's moved to those items, it will generate demand. However, agreements do behave a little differently. Now, we'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but when products are moved to agreements, they're listed on the Additions tab, which really means that we're just using that product price to set a recurring price for this entire agreement. So if we have multiple different products at different prices, they'll be added together, and that's how our agreement invoice will generate with that particular amount. Now, there is a way for us to allow that to also generate demand. It doesn't do that by default, though. But we will cover that in a later slide and get a little bit more detail on that.
And the question I get asked every single time I bring up opportunity conversion, which is, I was told I need to convert to a sales order every single time. Why are these other options there? Well, just because you need to convert to one every time doesn't mean every partner does. Likely, if you were told you need to convert to a sales order every time, that's probably something that someone in your company and a business consultant here at ConnectWise during your implementation came to when they were actually implementing your ConnectWise Manage. Based on what your process was, the sales order made the most sense. That doesn't mean you never want to convert to the others, or for other partners at least, but for your process to be followed, sales orders are required, and they're going to offer us some unique functionality, which I'll get to in a second.
Yeah, and one of the big items would be, say you're converting an opportunity directly to a project. Well, it's likely that your project team has their eyes out on that particular board, and the last thing you want is for all of these items to be dispatched out before you even have the products received to complete the job. That's probably the strongest case that I tend to see for using sales orders instead of directly translating to the end product, that project record.
Yep. So before I actually get into the sales order itself, I also wanted to go over those product classes in a little bit more detail because they're really a big factor, not only with purchasing, but converting products as a whole. So depending on what product class you use, depends on what you're quoting for. If you're going to be quoting for labor, you're going to want to use a service class product. That's because these service class products are not going to enter your purchasing cycle at all. You don't need to purchase them. Really, we're just adding them to a quote to represent the time that's going to be added later. And that time is also how you're going to be invoicing for this, not an actual product itself. The product is just there for that quoting stage, and these service class products will actually disappear when you convert them over to a service ticket or a project. They're not going to disappear entirely, though. We're going to use that product to actually define the billing settings for those records. Now, if you're going to be quoting for a recurring contract, this is where agreement class products come into place. They have recurring settings on them where you can actually define how often they bill and on what cycle. And on top of that, they're also going to be filtered out whenever you go to convert to a service ticket or project. You won't see those agreement class products since those are being quoted specifically for those contracts. Now, if it's something you keep in stock, if you have on-hand counts of this product, and then you're going to want to use an inventory class product. These inventory class products actually will keep track of your on-hand counts and can have serial numbers associated with them so you can track which individual products that you are selling at a given time. Now, if it's something that you need to order, you can use either inventory or non-inventory. Non-inventory obviously is not going to have an on-hand count ever. It's something that you're pretty much going to be ordering on demand. You sell it, you order it, ship it out. Never really sits in your warehouse. Inventory products, you're going to need to order if you ever run out of them. So that is when they're going to be used as part of the ordering process, or if they're special ordered.
So agreement class products are really designed to translate directly to an agreement class record. They allow you to actually, through that conversion process, create an agreement that already has the billing terms you would want to have set. Maybe it should be monthly, maybe it's some sort of managed user type setting. You can set that up on the product record, send it over. It's not going to try and generate demand for there being a managed user that you're supporting, but it will set those billing terms. Now, inventory and non-inventory can also be used to generate those additions. You would have to go in and set your billing terms, whether you want it to be monthly, yearly, etc., but they would list on the Additions tab and allow you to say, we're billing for this particular product, whether it's toner or possibly ink, on a recurring basis. And we'll talk even more in a little bit about generating demand for that.
Yep. And then the last class is going to be bundle, and these are typically used for either maybe it's a bundle of inventory or non-inventory type products, one thing made up of many things, but I also see them often used for projects. Whenever you are quoting for a very complex piece of work that involves multiple steps of labor along the way, you can build a bundle of all of those steps, and during the conversion, those steps will be used to build out your work plan on your project automatically, which can save a ton of time and create consistency between what was sold and what is delivered later on.
And what's interesting about bundle class products is that they're really made up of products that can be in different classes. So you have the bundle, which is representing all these different projects. Maybe it's products, maybe it's an exchange installation that has installation time represented by a service class product, then the hardware that you actually need represented by inventory and non-inventory. Well, what's interesting about this is that when you think about the pricing for it, you have two options for bundle class products. Do you want to have a list price, which means we're ignoring the price that you estimated in your product catalog for the hardware and for the services, and we're going to bill this set amount, so maybe $5,000 for this particular installation, regardless of what those components cost themselves. Or you can have a calculated price, which means as I'm building this bundle, as I'm adding the labor products, as I'm adding the different hardware to this, I want it to take all those prices, add them together, and set that as the main price for this entire bundle. Now, we'll cover this a little bit more later, but that'll be important when we're deciding how we want to send these items over to the accounting package. Do we want to know what those individual components were priced at, or do we just want that main calculated price?
There's a lot of important decisions throughout the whole process based on how we want to classify and log our different products. So I mentioned sales orders earlier. Here we're going to take a look at one. And one of the great things about sales orders and why many partners require them as part of their process from converting from sales to service and purchasing is going to be these two options we see up here. The ability to convert the sales order again to another record, which allows it to kind of be a link in the chain, whereas a service ticket or project or agreement are really the end of the process. Sales orders can be converted a second time, and this create invoice button. Oftentimes when you're quoting for product and labor side by side, you don't want to wait till the end of the labor for you to actually invoice. The product you have to purchase up front, you incur that cost up front. Many partners need to invoice up front as well. However, if you're invoicing for a service ticket, especially if it's fixed fee, the invoice is once. You only get one invoice, and that's going to be after the labor has been completed. So for the product, you're waiting until that labor has been completed to actually see that revenue. If you use the sales order as an intermediary, you can convert to that sales order, invoice for the actual product itself, then convert again over to that project or service ticket, and then perform the labor and invoice for the labor separately. So it allows more flexibility from a billing perspective.
And it is nice because it's giving you that flexibility to bill in advance, so you're not just completing all this work, ordering all these products, and then potentially footing the bill for it yourself. You're getting some money from the client up front. But also, when you're using the sales order, you don't really have to worry about accidentally double billing, because once the item has been invoiced, it will not flow into invoicing again. So on the final project record.
All right. So now that we know what we're selling and what we're converting over, let's actually get those products.
Yeah, so the first thing to do to get those products from our vendor is we need to let them know that we need them. So that's where creating purchase orders comes in handy, or is necessary. The first screen that you'll see is the approval screen. So once an item, we're talking about generating demand, what does that mean? It means it'll flow into this screen automatically. So let's say we have a particular product on an opportunity, we win it, we convert it to a sales order. Well, at that moment, it's going to say, hey, this is non-inventory, this is inventory. Let's push this into approvals so it can be approved and then be purchased. Now, you don't have to do approvals, because really from this screen, all you're saying is, okay, we did need to purchase this, I'm double checking, yes, we should be purchasing this. It's not going to order it from your vendor automatically. It's just a way to be make your members a little bit more accountable for verifying that these items do need to be purchased.
Yeah, it adds an extra level of security into the process.
For sure, and you do have the opportunity, if you do not need this, if you have the same person approving and creating the PO, then it might be a good idea to just skip this step. And you can do so within the My Company screen under System. You'd scroll down to the Purchasing and Inventory Setup options, and you can say whether you want to auto-approve products, which that just means skip the approval screen. Go straight into purchasing.
I also want to call out on here, there are several other purchasing and procurement related items, specifically a couple of checkboxes that say auto close. I'll touch on those more later on, and they'll make more sense once we see how we actually receive products.
Sure. So this brings us to the purchasing screen. Either we have just decided, hey, these items are good, let's approve these and move them into purchasing, or they flowed here automatically because we skipped purchasing approvals. Well, this is where we can actually generate those purchase orders to then notify our vendors that we need some products to be shipped. These products flowing in based on demand, we'll select the ones that we want to go ahead and order, and we will choose to create a PO. Now you can either create a brand new PO to reach out to Ingram Micro and say, hey, we need these 17 products, or you can add to an existing PO. Maybe you're already ordering from Ingram Micro and you just want to throw on another item that came through in demand.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind when you're building out these POs, they don't have to be linked to one sales order or one project or one service ticket. If I have 10 different sales orders open and I'm going to be ordering all those products from Ingram or Tech Data, I can create one purchase order for all those different sales orders since they're all coming from the same vendor.
For sure. The only exception to that is, hey, I want to send this directly to my client. I'm not bringing this in and then shipping it out as I see fit. I want to send this directly from the vendor to my end client. Well, that's what we refer to as drop shipping. And you'll notice here you can choose to manually drop ship a bunch of these items. In that case, you'd want it to be on its own PO because you're saying, hey, vendor, send it to Chris Craft Boats specifically. Don't even send it to my warehouse.
Yep.
Once you've created the purchase order, you will see this particular screen where you have the ability to change around some of those settings. Like I mentioned, drop ship versus ship to warehouse. Ship to warehouse will be the default. We're assuming, like Mitch said, you can go ahead and say, hey, I need 17 different products for 12 different clients from one vendor. Let's just send them one nice clear PO, bring that into our warehouse, and then ship it out as we see fit to our particular clients, or bring it on site, whatever we need to do. However, you can go ahead and select that dropship option just above, which will let you choose the particular client. So saying, hey, this isn't just a bunch of products we need from Ingram Micro, this is one product or two products we need for Chris Craft Boats, and have it send directly to them, so cutting you out of that process. Within the actual products tab, you can see really everything that you're ordering from your vendor on this particular purchase order. And what's nice about this is you have that first column which says whether it's open, meaning is it on order? Am I waiting for it to come in from that vendor? Or received, meaning I have received it to my warehouse, or it has been shipped to the client, and in that sense, it has been received because it's passing straight by us. Now on the main purchase order, this is actually where we notify the vendor, because of course the vendor is not a member in our system. They're not seeing everything that we're doing on this end. So we create this purchase order for them, tell them where to ship it, what to ship, and how to ship it, and then we would print out this PO, which is where we'd get this nice little form that we can send over to our vendor requesting these items and telling them where to send it.
Yep.
So we have a couple business cases thrown at the end here because there are some concerns that Olga, our procurement clerk, has about demand. So she needs to know when they're running low on stock, so inventory class products they keep on hand. Also, the level of inventory we need differs per warehouse, so help. This previously, we had some workarounds for it, but we have implemented with 2018.5 a clean solution for this. We've added an enhancement to this version where you can set the inventory minimum on hand per warehouse. Now, if minimum stock on hand is a mystery to you, you're not sure what we're referring to that, really we had this first option on the left side of the screen saying, what's your default minimum stock? And I would set that to 5. What that would say is that every single one of my warehouses needs to have 5 of this product in it at all times. If it dips below 5, we're going to automatically generate demand to refill that stock for that particular warehouse. So a pretty handy feature. The problem came in where maybe not every single warehouse needs 5. Maybe your main storehouse needs 5, but your engineer's car only needs 1. Well, now we've added in this separate pod that you see here, which minimum stock level, and you can set it by the individual warehouse that you have. So you could have particular cars, maybe smaller warehouses on different sites that can have less required than maybe your main warehouse or your main office.
Yeah, this is great because now not only can you keep the right products in stock, you can keep the right amounts in the right places. So a lot more flexibility to match what your inventory needs are on any given product.
For sure, and that's the cool thing about keeping things in inventory is that when I say, when I win a product for my client, move that over to a particular project, if I have that server, which that'd be kind of extreme, but if I have that server in stock, if I have it on hand, it's just going to grab from what I have on hand, not try to order from a vendor. Now that's really nice because once it does that, if we dip below that level that we've set, Olga doesn't have to keep managing these different warehouses, checking the inventory constantly. It'll go ahead and generate demand, letting her know that we need to get back up to that minimum level we've required. She's running into additional issues. That's not good enough. That is not enough to help Olga's process. She's concerned with all of her clients' contracts that include recurring product shipments. This could be like the toner ink, something like that. She needs help monitoring when these products need to be ordered and ensure that they're drop shipped to the client site because they don't need to receive that ink in and send it back out. They just want it to go directly to them on, say, a monthly or a bi-monthly basis. Well, we have another fun enhancement for you in 2018.5. What we've done is we've added some additional options to the agreement additions. Now, when we were talking before about translating a non-inventory class or an inventory class product to an agreement, it's really setting that recurring billing amount. It's not necessarily intended to order products automatically. You can do this, though, if you select purchase item on that particular edition. So in this case, you would say move that printer ink over to the Additions tab, meaning we're going to charge them $25 a month because we know we're going to have to provide that ink to them. Well, now you can select Purchase Item, and Olga's not going to have to manage these contracts, go through and dig through to find out when they need their ink. They're going to show up in purchasing or purchasing approvals for her automatically, and she can order them as these agreement invoices are generated in the system.
Yeah, this is great. It lets you very quickly and easily bill on a recurring basis and purchase on a recurring basis as well, if that thing you're billing for needs to be repurchased on that same cycle it's being billed.
For sure. And not only do we have the ability to have this generate demand based on the billing cycle of the agreement, but you can choose whether or not you want this particular item to drop ship, so send directly to the customer, not come to you first, or be special ordered. Now, we haven't talked about special order yet, I don't think, but special order means I have this in my stock. So I hold this item on hand, but I don't want to use what I have in stock. I want to go ahead and order this from my vendor and send it directly and send it to the customer. Now, if we want to send it directly to the customer, we would select dropship in addition to special order. But special order just means don't use my stock, order it.
Ignore those on-hand counts.
Absolutely. So forcing it to generate demand, even if we have it in our warehouse.
Yep. All right, so once we have ordered these products, next we need to track them, both arriving and then leaving our warehouse. This is where receiving, picking, and shipping comes into place. So first up is receiving. Products are going to be marked received when they arrive at your warehouse. This can be done in two different places. There is a receiving screen inside ConnectWise Manage on that left-hand side, where all the products that you have ordered through purchase orders are going to be listed out. And you can also receive them from the purchase order itself. So whether you're bringing in a ton of boxes at a time and just want to go through them all on one screen, receiving screen works great. But if you just have one order come in and you just want to kind of verify it against that order, you can mark them received from that purchase order screen as well. Another thing to point out, drop shipped products, since they never come to your warehouse, they go straight from the vendor to your client, those are going to be marked received automatically since we're skipping that step. Also, this is the step where serial numbers get entered for those serialized products. Those are going to be those inventory class products that you are ordering. If you have marked them as serialized as well, as you receive them in, you will also be prompted to scan in their serial number, so that way that on-hand count you just added has a number on file for it.
And if you're ever confused when you're looking through procurement by what are we considering to be picked, what are we considering to be received, and what are we considering to be shipped, just keep in mind that managers really looking out for your process. So it's whether you've received it from the vendor or whether you've shipped it to the client. So drop shipping to the client, it's bypassing your receiving, so it's going to automatically mark that as received.
All right. So here we're going to take a look at that receiving screen. And again, I mentioned I have a lot of different POs listed here. I can see those individual PO numbers with multiple different vendors. And if I open up my actions menu there, I can actually go ahead and update these en masse, or more often while we're here, is to receive them all at once. Also, another thing I wanted to point out, the actual purchasing process kind of follows that left-hand navigation. We started talking about purchasing approvals, then purchase orders, and now receiving. You'll notice on that left-hand side, that is the order those screens are in. So it's very easy to follow what that process looks like through ConnectWise Manage.
For sure, and in keeping with some of our best practices, this is a great screen with all these different actions to keep these records up to date. If you have been notified by Ingram Micro that they're really delayed on a certain set of products, you can go through here and set that expected date of arrival to the more accurate date. And really what this is doing is it's keeping you in the know, it's keeping that information available and managed as your source of truth. But also if someone calls into the dispatcher asking about their product, wondering when it's going to be received, your dispatcher can look at that PO and see up-to-date information because you've been managing it proactively.
Yep. So I mentioned we can also do this from the purchase order screen. We're looking at the products tab of that purchase order and open up that actions menu. You see a very similar set of actions. And we can also track how much we're purchasing and how much we're receiving on that right-hand side in that list view. So we can actually see how many still need to be received. Earlier, I was talking about how we can actually go ahead and use those auto close options on that My Company screen. Well, this is going to be coming in handy when we're actually keeping our records up to date. Not only does the purchase order itself need to be closed out once things are received, individual line items need to be closed out once the entire quantity for it has been received. This is something that you can do manually, but I feel like that's a waste of time. If we check those boxes in the My Company page, we can actually close them out automatically, both the line items and the purchase order itself, as soon as that last item on them has been received. Just saves a lot of time, cut out a couple manual steps that would otherwise slow us down.
For sure, and one thing, while I was working in support, I noticed that a lot of our tickets, a lot of our concerns relating to procurement was really not understanding where these settings were coming from. You'd have all these items marked as received and the PO would be closed out, and someone would call in or come in on chat saying, hey, why is this happening? Well, it's a lot of this is flowing through the My Company screen. So whether or not these kind of alert you, hey, that's something that's happening, maybe I should check that out. I would definitely recommend going to the system My Company screen and just reviewing those purchasing items, because whether it's adding a suffix or changing how this functions, there might be something there that would really benefit your process.
Yep. So once we have received them, the next thing to do is to pick and ship them. Products that have been purchased for a specific demand, this is going to be all of your non-inventory products and some of your inventory, are going to be picked automatically. You purchased them for a specific reason, a sales order, a service ticket, a project, or maybe a recurring agreement. That's what they're picked for. They're going to be used specifically for that, so we're going to pick them automatically. We don't need to set them aside. Now, if it's an inventory class product you're pulling from on hand, those you'll need to actually pick and choose which ones you're pulling over. And again, if they're serialized, this is the time when you go ahead and choose those serial numbers. Picking and shipping is going to be done from the same screens, which can be either the product shipment screen or the record that generated the demand in the first place. Much like we talked how we could use a purchase order to track receiving, we can track the actual shipping and picking on the sales order or service ticket or project that caused us to actually go ahead and purchase these in the first place. As it says there, the products are going to be shipped when they leave your warehouse, and dropship products are going to be shipped when they leave the vendor. That's when you're going to want to keep these records updated. So here we are now on that product shipment screen, and just some very basic actions. I can cancel the products, pick them, ship them, or unpick them. Cancel them is going to also cancel that demand that caused the need to ship in the first place. So one thing to keep in mind here.
Yeah, and this can be used, I think the most common use case for this is the client calls in and they no longer need this item.
Yeah.
Maybe they were looking for a mouse for one of their colleagues and they happen to find their old mouse that works perfectly fine. So they let you know, hey, we don't need this anymore. Instead of going back through having to delete that opportunity, delete the different items, you would just cancel that product from here and then not have to worry about the demand.
Yep. And I also mentioned you can ship this from the product screen itself. So here I'm on a sales order. I've opened up a specific product and I can see over here what inventory I have available. So if this is on hand and I want to pick it from here, I can go ahead and see, oh, my Tampa warehouse has a bunch, my supply closet is empty, but I can just grab it from that warehouse instead. And that's going to be done up top here in the picking and shipping. Use that plus icon to go ahead and start picking them. And here I can go ahead and start grabbing them. And as well, you can see I can grab the serial numbers right here at the same time.
And what's nice about this is that this screen has been updated quite a few times in the last year, so that now you can view it as text, meaning you can really easily copy and paste from other screens or other notepads. You can scan it in using a barcode scanner. We're trying to make it really easy to associate the right serial numbers with your various products.
Yeah, a question we get about those barcode scanners very often is what barcode scanners work. Any scanner that has a carriage return in there will work for you.
Absolutely. So into invoicing and the accounting package. We want to make sure, of course, that we're billing for these products, that we understand at what point we are and should be billing for these products, and then we want to make sure that it ends up in QuickBooks, Sage, Great Plains properly, as we intend, and we have those products listed as either the item record or whatever we'd call it in our accounting package. The first part being invoicing. You can invoice for products within Manage in several areas. The first of which we showed, which is that initial sales order. If you're converting from an opportunity, you can generate an invoice directly from the sales order to bill for those products even before you've ordered them from your vendor. Or you could wait. Now, if you wait and you want to bill for them after the project or the service ticket's been completed, that's when those items are going to flow into invoicing and you can generate a standard invoice from there. Now, agreement invoicing, as we mentioned, you can add those different products to the additions tab of the agreement through converting to an agreement. That's not going to show up in invoicing. It's going to show up like all other agreements through your agreement invoicing screen. And that is one of the tricks for demand, is that you actually have to create that agreement invoice before the demand will be generated for you to order those products. So just something to keep in mind, one of the specifics. And special invoices. If someone calls in, and maybe, I guess it's a better example for that mouse, you maybe don't need to create an opportunity. I mean, probably you should, because it's still a sale. But if you just need to create a miscellaneous invoice for a particular product that they're buying as a one-off, when you create that invoice, it will generate demand. And then, of course, you can print that invoice and send it to your client to be paid on it.
Yep.
And some of the nice things is that on invoices, this is another area where we've added a lot of enhancements in the past year or so. But you can display the serial numbers, the specific serial numbers for the products that should be shipped to them on that particular invoice, which really keeps everyone in the loop. If you ever run into an issue of, well, what happened to this product serial number, or they just want to confirm that they're receiving the right item from you, now you have that serial number to reference on the actual invoice, which both of you will have in your records. And then if you're ever wondering, well, maybe this was a call that I would get a lot, or a chat that I would get a lot, I shouldn't say call, a chat that I would get a lot would be, hey, I'm not seeing my products on my invoices. I'm seeing the proper amount, but I really need to know where this is coming from. I need to show my clients.
Yeah.
Or the opposite. I don't want to show them the amount, I just want to show them the total. Well, this is all coming from your system, setup tables, invoice template screens, whichever invoice template you're using. If you go to the body tab of that template, you'll see all of the options for products. It's called other charges. You'll see parentheses including products. That's where you can choose, what do you want to call products? Are your customers used to seeing that word, or would they rather see items or something like that? Or you can have different things like the product ID showing or not showing, the price, and then of course serial numbers. You can choose to hide those from your customers or make them available here.
And you can change the labels as well, so really a lot of flexibility here, so you can make your invoices make the most sense to your customers.
For sure. Like the words that we have that we have chosen for these different fields may not be the best option for your clients, so you do have the ability per invoice template, so not overall, to make additions to these. Now, product types. We covered product classes, so we know, okay, agreement, bundle, inventory, non-inventory, service. We understand these for our system, for how Manage treats them as they move through. But we also have a field specifically for the accounting package. And this is called the product type. It's right next to product class. And oftentimes they're the same thing, but they don't have to be, because they do not interact.
They do very different things.
They do very different things. The product type controls the behavior and tracking when it goes to our accounting package. So product type is what QuickBooks looks at, what Sage looks at, what Great Plains looks at, what they care about. And the product class is what Manage cares about. So product class, whether it should generate demand, whether it should go to the products tab or the finance tab of the record, etc. Product type is saying, when I send this to QuickBooks, should I consider this to be inventory? Should I try to track it? Should I tally how many have been sold versus received, etc.? Now, what's nice about this is that in this example, the product type is non-inventory and the product class is inventory. So we're saying we want to track this as inventory through Manage. We want to have our stock on hand, etc. But when you send this to QuickBooks with these invoices and with the purchase orders, don't track it as stock in QuickBooks. We don't want to handle it through that application. You could also do the exact opposite. Say we don't want to have stock on hand and minimum stock levels in Manage, but we track that in QuickBooks, so it's really entirely up to you.
Oftentimes you're going to want them the same though, so
true.
If that is something you care about, make sure that they are both set to track accordingly. Setting one is not going to take care of the other.
For sure. And the tricky thing with type is that class is hard-coded in the system. So you can't change what we refer to as agreement, what we refer to as inventory, non-inventory. Type you can. So another thing to look out for is making sure that they truly match. Because you could have an item called inventory, but if it's not associated with the type cross-reference of inventory, you're still not hitting the mark. What the accounting package is going to look at is this actual cross-reference. I definitely recommend naming your types based on the cross-references just to keep everything really simple and really clear, but you can have different options. Like in this example, the product type is camera video, and we've associated it with we're about to select inventory part. Now, when it comes to posting the accounting package, this is really where we move out of the procurement screen, probably for the first time, and we get into finance, or invoicing. We've already moved out of the procurement screen, but this whole section, we're going into the accounting package or the accounting interface screen, which is tied to the accounting interface setup table, accounting package setup table, sorry. Now, what we're really concerned with here is actually both the unposted invoices and unposted procurement. Because really, when you're talking about affecting inventory in your accounting package, the invoice is what's deducting, because that's what we're selling, and the purchase order or the procurement items are what are adding to our stock. So these are both very important. If you're seeing confusing numbers in your accounting package, it might be because you haven't moved over all those procurement items. So you've been selling like crazy because you're moving your invoices, but you haven't recorded that you're receiving anything in. So that can be another important factor, especially if you're tracking inventory within Manage and your accounting package. So we do have some settings within that setup table that I mentioned, the accounting package setup table, that determines how this functions, how we're sending items over, and all those specifics that we want to be very careful for so that we're accounting properly. So kind of drilling into a couple of these items, some that can be a little bit confusing, inventory SOH. Now, one thing that I'll call out is you'll notice on this list already, a couple of these items are grayed out. when you select your accounting package, it'll let you know visually which ones are even applicable for you. So before you start wondering, oh man, I don't have that set, maybe that's a problem, go in and check, select your particular accounting package, the one that we recommend in the documentation, see what's even available, and then review the definitions, because these might not be applicable to your accounting package, which is good to know up front.
Yeah, different integrations integrate differently.
100%, which is why we have a lot of documentation on the various integrations. But kind of at a high level, the inventory SOH is pretty necessary when you're tracking inventory within your accounting package. This will allow you to take the product ID and connect it to the item ID in the accounting package. And it's very important that those two match if you have inventory SOH selected, because it's saying this product ID equals this item ID. When it moves over, deduct, add, where applicable. And it'll also allow you to have that item ID display on the QuickBooks invoice. So keeping everything really clear when you're moving these through the different systems. Send component amount. Send component amount really ties back into that bundle class product, because as we mentioned, a bundle class product is one product, say an installation, used to represent multiple parts that can be different classes, etc. And they have their own prices because they're just another product record in our system until they're added to a bundle as a component. Now, send component amount means if I am using a calculated price for my bundle, so my exchange is looking at all the different component products, their prices set up in the product catalog, adding them together to generate the actual price for this bundle, do I want to send those component prices over as well? Or do I just want that main calculated bundle price? If I select this option and have it set to calculated, I'll not only get the main price, but I will also be able to see those individual prices of the components in my accounting package, which if that's necessary for your reporting or your invoicing, you definitely want to have this selected. We also have send unit of measure with products, and really I would keep this pretty simple. If you're using unit of measure in the accounting package, consider looking into this on the manage side, because you do want those to match up so that your unit of measure is being represented properly in both systems and not causing any confusion when these products are moving over in segments. And then finally, I wanted to cover include COGS entry. This is really just covering cost of goods sold. Do you need the price only, or do you also want the cost to be sent over the accounting package? This can be really essential when you're looking at reporting through QuickBooks or the accounting package if that's something you're interested in. If it's not necessary, you can leave it unchecked though.
Yep. All right, I wanted to quickly run through the last key takeaways for you guys before we wrapped up. First and foremost, make sure you start your purchasing lifecycle by converting those won opportunities. That is always going to kick off your demand the right way. That way there's a link, it saves time, creates consistency. Also, the way you order products should best suit your situation. There's a lot of flexibility, special order, drop ship, multiple vendors, just one vendor, split them out. Make sure you do the one that is right for you. Then, once they are ordered, track them by receiving, picking, and shipping right through that whole process. And finally, at the end, make sure all this information does end up in your accounting package so that you are set, and then use those settings Renee mentioned to make sure that you're tracking them all correctly.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the live Q&A portion of our Purchasing Lifecycle webinar. We're excited to go through some of the questions that we got in advance.
So our first question that came in was how do I automate checking in on ordered products? It's great that we're tracking this process in Manage from when we first generate that demand to eventually when we ship them out, but we need to see where they are along the way, and I'd like to see that without having to constantly go back and check every day or so. So there is something we can do, and it's going to be through using workflow rules. We can actually use workflow rules to track this all the way through. This screenshot, I'm actually taking a look at the sales order itself. So I'm looking at our sales orders, and I've actually just listed out 4 different triggers. You can actually add on more to these, but I listed the triggers by themselves just so we can take a look. The first one is going to take a look at all products that have either been picked or received. This one is important to have both those criteria in there, because whenever I'm selling product that I have on hand, those are going to be picked instead of ordered. So those will never actually be received. So we need to be checking for both, which this first trigger will do. The next one is we're looking for, okay, we've got all the product picked, but we have not actually shipped it out yet, which is, again, just kind of verifying step 1 is complete before we go to step 2. And then finally, once that is completed, all product has been shipped. And then that last one down there is unique to sales orders, which is that there are unconverted products on the sales order. So this is, all right, we finished what we need to do in the sales order, but we haven't converted this over to that next step. And these top 3 triggers can actually be applied to both tickets and projects as well. They're not unique to just sales orders. So it doesn't matter what it is that's generating this demand. We can track the products on it and where those products are in that life cycle.
Yeah, with our new conversion options on the various screens, especially on opportunities and sales orders, it's pretty easy to make sure that these products are moving smoothly through the system. But when they start getting onto purchase orders, that can be a really difficult time to keep track of everything that's currently on order, received in, should be shipped out, everything. So it's really nice to be able to set up these rules. So like Mitch said, you're not going through and micromanaging all of your records and trying to figure out what's going on. You can get a quick update when something's in a particular status that maybe it shouldn't be in for 2 weeks. You can be really, really specific with your workflow rule triggers.
Yeah, as a project manager, I want to be notified as soon as all my products are ready to be shipped. I'm going to use that second trigger there, except for my projects rather than my sales orders. And then I'll just have an action set up to either assign me as a resource, notify me, email me, whatever I need to do to go ahead and ship those out.
Perfect. So whoops, I should not have had those accounting package settings in place. What do I do now? So oftentimes we'll notice, I know I would see this quite a few times when I was back in support, maybe a particular setting is selected that shouldn't be selected on the accounting package setup table. Maybe a GL entry was created incorrectly, an error. Now you've sent these items over to your accounting package, whether it's QuickBooks, Sage, and it's not populating correctly. Well, we have a couple different ways where you can actually unbatch these different items and make corrections. If you're already familiar with this feature, it would be within the accounting interface screen. Under that finance module, you would go into the open batches tab, and within there you could delete the entire batch. So everything you just sent over, delete it, which would really just, we say delete, but it's really just reopening all these records for editing. Well, the only difficulty there would be that now you have all of these records that are open. Most of them, or all of them, should still exist in your accounting package, and you really have to be sure that you're not going to create duplicates. So you would correct one, send it over, make sure it was deleted, and then batch all the rest out into a particular file to put on your desktop and delete. That was really the best option for making sure that you could make these changes and not end up with duplicates in the accounting package. Well, with 2018.5, we actually added in a new feature to make this even easier. And what this will be is you can now, from a particular purchase order, you can unbatch the freight of that purchase order, or you can unbatch the individual products on a really individual basis. So this way, you don't have to go through and delete that entire batch and make changes. You go into the individual item that you need to delete, you reopen that, you delete it, so unbatch that item, and then you can delete it in the accounting package, correct it, send it back over. And it's just that one thing that now needs to be handled.
Yeah, this is a big time saver because oftentimes it's not the whole batch that was wrong. It was 1 or 2 products that had an incorrect mapping in place that went to the wrong spot in my accounting package. Rather than having to deal with an entire batch and kind of make sure that everything is being corrected, rerouted to the correct spot, make sure there are no duplicates, re-verify all that. We just make the change to the one thing that was a problem rather than the entire batch. Just a lot easier process overall and simpler.
For sure. And now this can be done for an individual invoice, an individual expense entry, or an individual purchase order. And the purchase order is slightly more complicated just because the unbatch option on the purchase order will be for freight. Within the products tab, those will be for the individual products.
All right, our next question came in was, I want to order the exact same product for multiple service items in Manage. Why are they split into separate line items on the purchase order? And I think when they say service items here, they're referring to either tickets or project or sales orders, that record that's initiating that demand. So really what they're asking is, I'm selling the same product on 2 different tickets or 2 different projects or a sales order and a project. Why, when I go to purchase them on the same purchase order, are they showing up in 2 different line items, which is exactly what we're seeing on this purchase order right here. So if we zoom in here, we'll see that I have 2 of, I'm not even going to bother with that product ID, that long string of numbers and a K, and they're actually coming from, one from a service ticket and another is coming in from a project. And when I created my purchase order, I decided, well, I'm going to order the same product from the same vendor. That makes sense. So I'll throw these 2 different products for 2 different items on that same order, just to make it easier, but now they're showing up as separate line items. And there's an important reason for that. We still need to track them independently. For example, if the vendor was only able to ship one of them at a time, I need to receive one, well, I need to know which one I'm receiving it for. If they're both lumped together in that same line item, there's no way to indicate, no, this one's for the ticket, not the project. Another reason is just because they are the same product ID doesn't mean the rest of the information is the same. As soon as I add a product to a sales order or an opportunity or a service ticket or a project, I can start changing it and editing it from the default information found in my product catalog. So in this example, the descriptions and costs are the same, but they don't necessarily need to be. As soon as I've added them on to that ticket and project, I can change those as needed because I may have sold it slightly differently with a different description to one item than another, and we need to be able to verify that and track that individually on that purchase order.
Absolutely. So really the difference here just being, instead of ordering, if you put a quantity of 2 on a laptop on a service ticket, you know all of the other information is going to be identical because you're only changing the quantity. You're not going through and changing the description for each one of those laptops. If one's coming from a product, one from a service ticket, they could be totally different, and we want to make sure that we retain all those details instead of lumping them into one line and making it a little bit more murky where they're coming from and what details you may have altered.
Yeah, and again, even if they're not different, when I receive them, I need to be able to receive them against the individual records that spawned that demand in the first place.
Exactly. So I'm not using QuickBooks as my accounting package. I'm very confused. So part of this is probably on us because when I think accounting package, I think of QuickBooks. Most of the partners that I've worked with are using it.
The vast majority, I'd say.
Yeah, but we do have a lot of partners using Sage, Great Plains. We support tons of different accounting packages. So if you're a little bit overwhelmed by all the different fields you see in the accounting package setup table, don't worry. There are some really quick ways that you can kind of filter through that information and decide what's actually important for you and figure out which fields you need to set up and how. So really the easiest way that I can think of is get into that accounting package setup table, and at the top for accounting package, select the one that's most appropriate to the type of package that you're using. So if it's QuickBooks, select QuickBooks. One thing you'll notice that I just wanted to show really quickly is if I have other, which someone using QuickBooks Online would select other, certain fields are grayed out. If it's grayed out, that really just means for your accounting package, don't worry about this. It's not applicable. You don't need to even consider what it means or whether or not it should be selected. It's not an available option. Now, when I change this from other to QuickBooks, you'll notice different fields are grayed out, different fields become available because QuickBooks has slightly different functionality, slightly different features than QuickBooks Online. And this will work for every single package that we have listed here. Now, I mentioned QuickBooks Online, but that does cover a wider variety of packages. So if you go into the documentation, locate your accounting package, it'll tell you to select other or which one's appropriate. Now, furthermore, one thing that I would recommend is that we do have documentation on all these fields that covers what it affects, how it should be set up, etc. But what might be the easiest place to start is we'll come into the screen, see which fields are available, and then definitely check out the marketplace. If you're in our integrations section, you can look for your specific accounting package, and then within documentation section, it'll take you to that vendor's documentation. Now within there, a lot of them actually have screenshots of our setup tables showing you what to select, what to put in those fields. So that might be the fastest way to get this set up for your particular integration. And then of course, if you just want to know a little bit more detail, we do have this particular page or this setup table documented fully in our university. That little question mark with a circle around it, our help icon, will take you directly to that page. So you can review our definitions for the fields.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different accounting integrations out there, and while they're all very similar, there are slight differences between them. And all those differences and how they're all set up is documented in depth on our marketplace.
Absolutely. Also keep in mind, if you're looking for some events to attend, we actually don't have a slide for our user groups or IT Nation Share events coming up in Q3 in the beginning of Q4, but definitely check those out. We will have sales and marketing content there. But IT Nation, registration should be open for IT Nation now. So if you're interested in coming for some thought leadership and other presentations from us, definitely check it out. It will be hosted in Orlando in early November.
Yeah, one big difference about this IT Nation as opposed to last is a huge focus on thought leadership, whereas the last have kind of been a split between thought leadership and product content, how to actually use the ConnectWise tools. This IT Nation is all about thought leadership. We will have a pre-day event that goes over the products, but the main event itself is really to help you get the most out of your business and really connect with other partners while you're there.
Absolutely. And yeah, just keep in mind, it is a 3-day event. Now, there are a couple things happening on that first day, but the main being what Mitch referred to. We're calling it our University Pass, which you can choose to add on to your registration. We have a manage track, an automate track, a report writer track, and a sell track. So whichever product you're most interested in really diving in and going through a full day of training cultivated for that particular product, you can sign up for that. And then, of course, the next 2 days will be sessions similar to what you've seen in other IT Nations, but they will be very business leadership focused.
All right, let me go ahead and see if we have any questions so far. I do not see any, so in that case, I would like to thank everyone for attending and for sending those questions in ahead of time, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.